just piecemeal a little bit everywhere. So for example, we cut out industrial technology and home economics out of the middle schools. That was completely taken away. We limited the number of foreign languages that we offered at the high school and only offered French and Spanish at the middle schools instead of the German or Latin or the other programs that we had. And so it was a big shot against the students in Newark City schools to have to go through that reduction. I can't say that the reduction was simply caused by this, but I can tell you that this money would have helped avoid a lot of that.
Great. I want to go back for a moment to another point, and I'd like for you to talk for a moment about how did ECOT really start in the Newark City schools? And you've referenced in other conversations a castle on the canal. And can you tell us a little bit about
Sure.
how that happened and
Sure.
What the history of that is?
ECOT originally started in Newark City schools simply as an online program, and students would sign up. They were to get a computer, internet service, and have curriculum program for the students to do online learning. It really wasn't until we started through the inspection of some of the homes for the truancy that we found out about what was happening with this new program that had started in Newark called the Castle on the Canal, and it had been open for a couple years. Rita Jackson, a former teacher in Newark City schools, ran the castle, and it said that it was an ECOT school on their sign, and then when the people signed up, they signed up for ECOT. And so when the students' names came through, the ones going to the castle were in addition to the ones that were already in ECOT that were on the online. What we found out was, one, the castle had never been zoned and approved. The fire marshal, when we did this news release, had a fit. He said, this is not approved to be a school. We found out that there were students that were on probation that had limitations of who they could interact with and how they had to be supervised, and they needed to be that needed to be corrected, and so we pointed that out. There was a young lady who was on home arrest that was not allowed to be anywhere other than at school supervised, and yet they did a field trip without the parents' permission. They took the young lady to the shopping mall, to a movie theater, let her see the movie, and then let her run around the mall unsupervised, which the mother was furious and came back and shared that with us. When we approached ECOT about the violations and the things that were happening at the castle, they came back and said, that isn't our school. And that's when I said, well, if that isn't your school, then I want the money back for those students, the deduction for those students. And we pointed that out to the Attorney General's office and the State Department of Education, and that was ignored as well.
It sounds almost unbelievable.
Oh, it's incredible. I believed at the time, I believe today that it's criminal. I don't think it's just unacceptable. I think it's criminal.
It seems clear to me, though, that if you as superintendent had not taken responsibility for trying to resolve the situation that there were students receiving no education, would anybody have taken the responsibility?
I just don't know. I've watched this and I've seen what's happened in the media. The state of Ohio is one of the laughing stocks in the country about how we deal with community schools. Again, I know there are some good community schools out there. I've got some friends that work in some of them. And some students learn in different ways, and if that's the best way, then I'm not opposed to community schools. What I'm opposed to is the state taking money and then not holding them accountable and responsible for the students getting a quality education like they do the public schools. I mean, public schools should be getting the money first, not the community schools. The community schools seem to always get increases in revenue, get increases in funding, when they cut the public schools. It seems like there's a mindset out there that if we just hurt the public schools enough that we can quit having to deal with the fact that the Supreme Court's decided 4 times that school funding is unconstitutional in the state, and the legislature's done nothing other than the Facilities Commission to deal with that.
You know, Keith, here on September 14, 2016, ECOT is today, and has been for the last couple of days, in court seeking a preliminary injunction to stop the Ohio Department of Education from auditing their student count. Now, the superintendent of ECOT has said that if a kid signs in no more than a minute a day, then ECOT is entitled to the total amount of funding for that kid. What's your reaction to that sort of? Here's supposedly an educator is saying, if a kid signs in and gets 1 minute of education per day, then we're entitled to the funding. Now the court is dealing with the funding issue, but I think lost in this whole thing is what happens to these kids? What's your reaction to that?
It angers me. It frustrates me. Education is my career, is my life, and all I've ever wanted is for boys and girls to get a quality education and be the best that they can be. And whether they do it through a community school or a public school or a parochial school, it is the parent's choice. But when the legislature and the officials that are responsible to see that students get a quality education hold these other entities to a different standard than they do the public schools, it angers me. Bill, you know, if my treasurer had an accounting error for 5 cents that was wrong, that was a clerical error, there'd be a finding for recovery for that 5 cents. And here we've got $5.3 million from Newark City Schools alone, over $1 billion that ECOT's received from 2002 to today, and it's like, oh, but it doesn't matter whether the kids got a quality education. It doesn't matter whether most of the money goes to the administrators and the kids aren't getting education. It's okay. It's not. And it angers me.
What would you say to the governor or the attorney general, the auditor, the Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, and these people could do something about this? What would you say to those people if we had them assembled here in this room?
I would tell them to stand up and be responsible for the boys and girls in this state, protect the taxpayers in this state, to see that billions of dollars that are being, in my opinion, fraudulently wasted are accounted for and paid back.
Do you have an opinion on why responsible, elected officials, from the governor to the attorney general, throughout all, the state superintendent, do you have an opinion as to why this, what you had called criminal activity, has been allowed to continue, not only from 2006 when you dealt with this to today, but back as far as 1999? Do you have an opinion as to why this could take place in the great state of Ohio?
It's my opinion that the powers that be that are getting the money for many of these digital community schools give major contributions to different political candidates and entities, and they've become untouchable.
And so we've spent in this state since 1999 about $9 billion. $9 billion had.
That's with a B, Bill, not an M. A billion.
$9 billion that has been extracted from the public common school system and provided to community schools, many of which are not measuring up to the standard of public education. I mean, the very reason that people started community schools was to improve, but we've